Okay, we are live now, I think, right? Dear colleagues and friends, and of course you who have joined to follow us as audience, on behalf of the organization Lokomotiva, Center for New Initiatives in Arts and Culture, and Oracle Cultural Network, I warmly welcome you to this open discussion titled "Who Cares About Culture?" organized within the 22nd International Congress of Cultural Managers and Operators, Oracle. Every year, Oracle brings together cultural professionals to discuss the currently most important topics in culture, to get to know each other's cultural practices, policy, institutions, and the specifics of the context in which they work. Through the lenses of this year's Oracle thematic framework titled The Vision, as dealing with the social, political, and economic polarities in culture and society on one hand, and the vision for a better, more equal future in solidarity on the other. Today, we will try to look more closely at the power dynamics and hierarchies in our local context, so brutally dismantled and forced and contextualized by the COVID-19 pandemic. Within their presentations, few representatives of the independent as well institutional cultural sector will speak about their experiences, needs, work conditions, possibilities for realization of their planned programs in this, let's say, rather extraordinary year, as well as some ideas for overcoming the challenges and enabling equity in the overall cultural sector. Before we start with the official part of the event, I would like to ask you to consistently follow the technical requirements in order for the program to run smoothly. The speakers to respect the given time for the presentations, to keep their cameras on during the event, just to keep this feeling of being together, even in this kind of format, and to turn on their microphones only to speak. The audience that is together with us on Zoom, we ask them to follow the event with cameras and microphones off and to leave questions and comments in the Q&A section. For those of you who are following us on the live stream on the Facebook page, you can also leave your comments and questions in the comment section of the video during the event, just below the video. Your comments and questions will be shared during the discussion after the presentations, in which also the audience at Zoom can participate directly. In that part, the speakers will have the opportunity to exchange their remarks, questions, answers, whatever. For additional technical support, you can directly contact our Nenad Tonkin, who is providing technical support and overall care for the event. So now we can go on with the official part of the event and the presentations. The first one to present today is Ivana Vaseva, curator and researcher of cross-disciplinary, collaborative and socially engaged works and programs. She's program director of the organization Faculty of Things That Can Be Learned and is co-curator of the ACTO Festival of Contemporary Arts. Welcome, Ivana, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Cristina. Thank you, Biljana and Violeta, for inviting me to be part of this seminar. I would have to say that this is a really intriguing title, Who Cares About Culture, Circumstances in the Local Context. Whilst preparing for this presentation and reading the title, I realized that this is a really huge topic, really broad topic that we all have this task to tackle upon today. I have to say that from my perspective, I can say a lot of stuff, but in this case, I will have to shorten my presentation. So maybe the first question while addressing this topic is, what are the circumstances in culture today, why they are the way they are, from where this originates, and what to do with them. So while trying to answer to this question, I have to say that while we all have to address it before starting before starting to deal with some production. But my conclusion is that while tackling these questions, the only people that try to really answer to it is the civil sector. And why is that? Why the civil sector? Why only the civil sector makes researches and tries to answer these difficult questions? Because the civil sector is the most vulnerable, the most precarious, the weakest, but not in capacities, but in strength sector in Macedonia. I would also say that the civil sector is also the sector that has many prejudices around it, and actually it cannot somehow remove them. Why is not anybody anything else anybody else trying to answer to these questions? This opinion of mine comes as a result of a field work and not an overall analysis. While working on two important things in the Ministry of Culture, one of them is the revision of the status of freelance artists in the Republic of North Macedonia, and the second of all, the law of public interest in culture, I realized, and also with the lawyers in the Ministry of Culture, that nobody actually does researches in culture in Macedonia. Only, and looking in perspective, looking in the past, we realize that only the civil sector really tries to answer methodologically and also structurally to these questions. Also like talking from a perspective of a person that works with institutions, I can say that nobody in the institution also tries to answer to these questions. An example of this is something that I worked on together with Violeta Grachakova and Ivana Todoroska, is the freelance artist and cultural worker. Since 2016, we really tried to also put forward a problem in the cultural policies in Macedonia, and that is the lack of understanding of the new professions in arts and culture. In Macedonia, only the status of artist exists, and the new professions such as the cultural worker and new professions that can be part of this umbrella term, like the critic in visual art, curator, manager in culture, coordinator in culture, doesn't exist as an official profession in Macedonia. So since 2016, we did a lot of stuff. For example, there were two revisions of the regulation of the status of the freelance artist. One of them was accepted, but the second one, when we tried to really revise the current regulation, it's not put in power because the new law of culture is still not in power, and this is 2 years, and it passed already 1 year and a half. And all these questions were raised on a symposium organized last November, and I have to stress that a year passed and nothing happened in the meantime. I would just like to point out to some of the conclusions that Violeta and I put forward on this symposium. I will read them again just to see what happened in the meantime. And this goes. The situation now, this is the slide that we presented in end of November 2019. New law of public interest in culture is still in ongoing finalization phase, not reaching the parliament to be voted. 2 years lost in managing ministers and back and forth situation with the preparation of the law, lost opportunity for new artists and cultural workers to enter the system of benefits. And the third, if the law doesn't go to the parliament in December 2019 and we have early elections, will you lose another year, taking in consideration that after the law is adopted, then should follow a new process of final adaptation of the book of rules. So as you can see, nothing is put forward. I would just like, as I said, like we can say a lot of stuff, but I would like to leave somehow the debate for questions and answers and responses, and maybe like we can all kind of rethink what we're going to do in the next year after this COVID pandemic finishes. I would just like maybe conclude with the 2 sentences that I tried to write. And that is my conclusion. We are the way we are because of the existent and still not contested way of cultural production. Culture is elitist. It does not belong to everyone. Culture is irrelevant to the social context because we still live in institutionalized modernism, and art still enjoys its modernist autonomy. Culture is clientelistic, and small nuclei repel the progressive forces that want to shake up the status quo. I hope that the COVID crisis will call upon solidarity that once existed and move forward of this situation. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Ivana. Really precise for the precise and on time presentation. I am sure that as for me, it opens floor for discussion later to the audience and to the other participants in today's discussion. So now we are now let me please welcome Filip Nikolovsky. He's a program editor and coordinator at the Youth Cultural Center in Skopje, MKC. For more than 15 years, he has been working in the field of culture, both at the independent cultural scene and at the institution MKC. So he can tackle the subject of today's discussion from his, let's say, double agent position. Filip.
Thank you, Kika. Hi to all. I would like to thank to this initiative and to take Lokomotiva as an organizer of this event. And I'm very happy and glad that today we have the opportunity to discuss on the topic that is really wide, but I will try to talk only for MKC and my field of work. I'm sure that this group today is eloquent to discuss and speak to many topics in the field of culture, and probably many topics will be covered in this discussion. But I have decided to share experience that is related specifically to my work and that arose from interior and exterior of my institution, Youth Cultural Center. And I decided to talk about the team that is connected to and associated with Corona crisis functioning and program activities in Corona time. We all know this year the coronavirus has literally attacked us, and in all spheres of social life. So the culture has not remained immune to this attack. This fight was with invisible enemy motivated us to find ways to produce and implement program activities that will make our lives and the lives of the audience more happier and interesting and bearable. The first activity that we started as Youth Cultural Center in this Corona time was the event Culture in the Time of Corona, which started in April and lasted for 2 months, I think, something like that. And that was a project that enabled Macedonian musicians to play in Skopje's neighborhoods, and that was the project that was played live in the neighborhoods and was streamed on the internet platforms. So the people has opportunity to watch the musicians playing in their own homes, actually, in their own yards. And afterwards, it has a fantastic response from the audience, and they were on the balconies, they were on the social networks. It was honestly, we were a bit naively, we thought that this Corona thing will pass quickly, and we were like, okay, in June we are going to have all the concerts back, and we are going to have live culture, but it doesn't happen as you can see. So then we realized that the coronavirus has come here to stay and hang out with us for a while. So we decided and took initiative with which we tried to find models for realization of program activities live. Then here I can say that everyone in Makaca team agrees that streaming is an alternative in this period, but for us, live program activities is the right way to present the program to the audience. So we managed and tried to do everything to put back audience, to get back the audience live on the concerts and other activities that we are planning in Makaca. The desire to find a model that will be functional in the field and at the same time will not endanger human lives. United us with several other enthusiasts, and we established the association called Cultural Promoters (KP). This group actively worked on drafting a protocol for organizing public events, which was presented and approved by the health authorities. So afterwards, we provided an opportunity to get the concerts live again, get the cultural activities live again. So after the approval of the protocol, we decided that we will have an active summer, and so we undertook activities for realization of events in the summer as never before. As we can say, for last year or previous years, during the summer when everybody is on holiday, we are just making a little break during July or something like that. And this summer we decided that there is no holiday for us, and we should work all summer long, and we should get more activities that we didn't realize in the previous period. So I can proudly say that this year we have accomplished more than 300 events, including festival and co-production events with other entities. And most importantly, in this year, we managed to exceed a limit of 20,000 visitors. And when I'm talking about live audience in Makaca, I'm not talking about the activities that were followed by the streams on the internet platforms. So I can proudly say that this year we managed to overcome the number of 20,000 visitors. It may sound a little bit immodest. I would not like to brag. I would just like to present some facts. That is my opinion. That is my statement, and I can proudly say that we made it in this Corona time. But here I would like to send some critics and criticize most of the public institutions which use the coronavirus situation for a long vacation, and only confirmed the opinion of the large part of the people in Macedonia that the public administration is sluggish and disinterested. And the management, also the management of the institutions is based on non-professionalism and political stuff that does not offer and does not know how to offer solutions in this kind of crisis period, as we can see on the film. So after overcoming this situation, I think that the state, the government structure, the governing structure, whatever it is in power, should ask themselves what are the capacities of the people that are who are managing the culture, and finally set up a system and provide system solution to overcome the problems faced by the people who create culture. This leads me to a conclusion of my presentation and is related to the topic we are debating today. Who cares about culture? So I think that we all care about the culture, but the state or the authorities at least, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Filip, for this, especially for this conclusion of your presentation that kind of stays with us and resonates. and I also think that it's going to be a great start for a debate later. And this is a point where I'm reminding the audience that is following us here on Zoom to leave their questions and comments in the Q&A section, and also the ones who are following the live stream on Facebook to do so below the video. So now I am we are at this point when I'm introducing our next speaker, and she is Simona Dimkovska, an actress and architect who applies her knowledge in both fields into her work in performing arts, but also with the international NGO Cultural Echoes. Simona, welcome, and you can go with your presentation.
Thank you, Kika, for the introduction, and thank you for Lokomotiva for inviting me to be part of this discussion. I think I thought a lot about the team, and I have many open questions as an actress and also as an activist. I can say that before the crisis, we were used to fast life. Me, for example, I was used to working on many projects at the same time, and somehow knew how to deal with institutional disorganization, sluggishness, shifting of the responsibility, not to mention the low amounts of approved funds for project realization. But when the pandemic came and the project were stopped, I stayed home. I stayed home together with 2/3 of the employees in the institutions. As far as I know, a part of funding and much of the culture was withdrawn, but the projects that were approved could still start, although later than originally planned. My experience with the project from abandoned factory to student town, that we worked with cultural ecos this past 3 months. I did a lot of research, which was difficult to conduct due to closure of all archives, all libraries, and the unavailability of those archives in digital form. But on the other hand, organizations organizing live events with 25% of audience for the audience, and all the measures that we needed to put on the events were really exhausting. And that was the same with organizing online live streamed events, because a few months after the pandemic, they were no longer, they don't have the desired effect. So the theater scene, I can say that was in even worse condition. Because of the really specific work, theaters were closed down during the first wave of measures. And now, even after 10 months, there is still no official protocol for working in theater, both for rehearsals and also for performances, as I know. Although several plays and performances had been carried out from institutional theater and also independent theater, some were online, some were live, but there is no opposite of this. There is a protocol and licensing for restaurants, coffee bars, betting shops, and casinos. Despite the new situation, the annual call for applications from the Ministry of Culture did not undergo radical changes for me. I just saw that they applied for many events to be as many events as possible to be held online and in compliance with the effective measure. That is all I can see, the difference. So according to the new law that had been awaiting implementations for 4 years, as well as the needs of stakeholders, this call should be divided into multiple calls per year, at least 2. This division should not be based only on the one field of activity, but it should add on new criteria that will result from cooperation with citizen associations who work in culture, not just the institutions under the ministry. There were also a series of economic measures for those hit hardest by the crisis, and I wonder where are the financial measures to help the civil sector, the freelancers and unemployed artists who did not belong to the category of freelance artists. Where is the Department of Development and Financing of Contemporary Interdisciplinary
cultural and artistic practices envisaged with National Cultural Strategy 2018-2020. I'm questioning where is there is a small, almost none of the envisaged cooperation between the non-government sector and the government institutions. Also, the action plan of the culture strategy is still only a good on paper. I wonder if it's even budgeted at all, especially the part about decentralization or balanced cultural development through the opening of at least one cultural center in each municipality. Where are the study programs for conservation and restoration of cultural heritage, for example? Also, the new law of protection of cultural heritage, the research institute on this field, nothing of this. There was only one collective agreement realized, the initiative of Cultural Trade Union of Republic of Macedonia, SKRM, which still does not cover the rights of unemployed stakeholders in culture. So the questions arise, then who cares about the culture? Here and now, where the focus is on the health and economic crisis above all else. I wonder how artists live and try to create this in these extraordinary conditions. I know for sure that in the new generations, the so-called young artists are among the most affected, and they are really tired and do not have the patience and time to wait around for new laws, new strategies that at the end of the day are not going to be implemented or budgeted. They are hardly believe in anything, and least of all that it will get better, and that they are the generations to fight for it. So the apathy is so great that the young artists are still here because the borders are closed. I'm sure that as soon as the crisis ends, many of them will leave in the short or long term in order to realize their professional potential somewhere else. And many of those who stay will focus on retraining in the field others than arts and culture. So when those who create culture disappear, this will leave no one really to care of culture, because that's the only real way we can care about culture, by creating it or helping someone else to create. The current practice of individual creation, individual projects and successes has isolated us to the extent that we no longer have time or interest for another or accept ourselves and what we do. So this approach has alienated us from each other and prevented us from seeing many opportunities offered by the collective approach. We need to get out of that comfort zone in which we all struggle in our own way without seeking help or cooperation from others, with others, despite the fact that we are faced with such similar problems and challenges. There is a strong need for association and joint action in order to provide the most basic working conditions. This has worked in some way for the employees, for the cultural institutions, through the Cultural Trade Union and signed collective agreement. But if I can compare the independent theater scene with this, like an example, there is a major, there is a big number of independent theaters, actors, directors who work part-time, but don't have initiative to unite. It is similar with other sectors, I think. So is there, I want to ask myself and everybody, is there a fear of failure and wasting time, a fear of compromise, a fear of trying to do something new? I think many questions are open, but we do not ask them openly. And it is the same, I think, with artists, musicians, and other cultural actors. Somehow we forget that many of our professions are collective. So as long as there is inertia and individual approach, I think that radical change will not happen. So my conclusion is that the civil society and freelance cultural workers should act together, whether through an umbrella organization or some kind of association that will advocate for basic rights and demands, or through some of other forms of association that will fight for decent treatment, minimal working condition, and access to finance. That common body should function as some sort of mechanism, an equal actor in cultural politics, and strive to equality and homogeneity of the entire cultural sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Simona, very much for this, this presentation. we are now going on with the other presenters. We are more than on time, so you can take your time even for this part of presentations. The next one to present is Goce Pavlovski. He's an archaeologist at the National Institution Skopje, but he is also a secretary of the Trade Union of Culture of Macedonia, SKRM, that Simona mentioned and talked a bit about their initiative and work and efforts. Goce, you can go now with your presentation.
Okay, hi all. Thanks for the privilege to be here, actually to be in company with these people and the privilege to express my opinions on the subject. I'm very happy that my talk will be pretty much in line with what the previous three speakers said. So it's good that more or less we're thinking in the same way and we can address the problems. So my talk will address the gap that we have between the workers in the institutions of culture on one side and the government, more precisely the Ministry of Culture, on the other. I will try to assess the factors for the problems and suggest at least the beginning of one solution. Most of the people who work in the institutions of culture would remember 2020 as the year we have reached the bottom. We have closed theaters, closed opera house, closed philharmonic orchestra, closed museums, sites, libraries, cinemas. It was a complete shutdown on every possible activity as the result of the COVID pandemic. The inability to find alternative solutions and the fact that the casinos, taverns, and betting houses reopened with certain protocols while the institutions of culture were completely lost signaled a very serious problem of the system. This certainly increased the already existing gap between the employees and the employers. Now, the decades of continuous perception that institutional culture is the last thing that the Macedonian society needs, and the political treatment in accordance to this notorious belief have been the silent killers, and now the world pandemic is just the catalyst in the complete collapse. The unavoidable question is why we didn't respond to the challenge and who should have cared more. In my personal opinion, there are three factors for the situations, and the answers are there if we look at the problems. Factor number one is the attitude of every government in the past toward culture, is that it hasn't been according to the constitution of the country, which defines the culture as a foundation value. They have failed to understand that culture is what defines human beings as human and creates the common identity for a group of people who live in one country. The Ministry of Culture and the institutions have always been perceived by the political parties as tradable goods, where they can achieve personal or clientelistic benefits. Although the most recent cultural strategy defined some kind of mechanism which was called departization and which was planned to change the practice of assigning directors from the party and employees from the party, what actually happened in the institution is alternative partization. Unlike the normal way where successful directors do not change with every new government, we always end up having directors whose accomplishment was inside the party and not in the society. Also, we never choose the best candidates for employment, but the ones who have connections in the ruling parties. Everyone who has tried to disobey or change this system, sooner or later was removed from that decisive position. Factor number two is the ministry itself, its organization, employees, and their perception of things. The Ministry of Culture 10 years ago used to be an institution of only 40 to 50 employees, and at some point of 2019, it reached 300 employees. Probably this is the largest ministry in the region by number of employees compared to the number of the population. The employees there, which rarely are people who understand what the institutions do and how it is done, as very few of them are artists or professionals, most of the time believe that they're above the institutions of culture just because they work at a ministry. Usually the ministers have small or no knowledge in the legal and financial system, so they must rely on these people. And the feeling of being superior and knowing that the ministers are changeable while the administration workers are permanent has given the bureaucrats of the ministry the freedom to make choices and invisibly create or adapt policies to their personal views. This is usually completely opposite to what the actual cultural workers believe is needed. Now, The third factor are the employees of the institutions, with the artists and the professionals in the cultural heritage being the supreme professions. As elsewhere in the public sector in the past decade, we can see continuous drop in the quality of the work of these employees and their abilities to fulfill the basic annual program. Of course, this is very closely connected to the management of the institutions and the type of workers employed by the managers. On the other hand, there is the big group of people who are truly worthy of their positions. However, they're not quite interested as professionals to take part in the public discourse or fight the policy of wrong. We honestly lack of active organizations of professionals who would stand opposed to the challenges. When I say active, I mean organizations which are not just ready to publicly express their opinions, but they're ready to fight for what they believe is right to be done. This is where the trade union of culture kind of fits in the picture of an organization which connects all employees from the institutional culture and which enables them to fight united on a very strong level that goes beyond political beliefs, goes beyond ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, and so on. The homogeneity comes from the need to protect your rights as a worker, which have been constantly neglected and threatened by the employers, which in this case are the ministry and the institutions. Also worthy to mention is that nobody in this union is paid and that the satisfaction for the sacrifice is the success in improving the existing reality. With the political changes in 2016 and the growth of the union, we positioned ourselves as a social partners of the ministry and expressed our will to help the new minister make the needed changes. Our primary goals were the law of public interest in culture and the collective agreement. Our members were included in the work groups that worked on these two documents and also that worked on the new strategy. Unfortunately, the politics kind of did a wrong turn again, and everything of this documents is now just piece of paper. This is where, as a trade union, we decided that we should focus only on the collective agreement, because this is the tool which can normalize the heavily disrupted system and provide security for the workers. Just as a reminder, the disrupted system means disobeying the rights of the workers. The salary and positions were defined by the directors in the past and the people with connections without paying any attention to the collective agreement from 2005. Now, the collective agreement itself is a document of around 50 pages, which defines the worker-employees relations. It can be done very quickly if there is the right amount of inspiration or the right amount of will. However, in our case, it turned out to be a 4-year struggle, literally a war, in which we organized the biggest protest of cultural workers. We organized a strike in all institutions and witnessed the change of 4 ministers. Even when we believe that all obstacles are removed and we will finally feel the benefits, the anonymous destructive forces, which are probably within the ministry itself, once again try to drown the only single thing in culture that sparkled hope in 2020 and the only thing in culture that sparkled hope during the term of this government. Fortunately, the government itself was much more aware than the ministry and prevented this from happening after we sounded the alarm. Now, I can say that today we have the ideal solution, and there are still problems which came from the implementation or the interpretation of the agreement. And again, although the solutions for the problems can be achieved just in one day, the communication with the ministry is almost non-existent, and there hasn't been any movement in months, no matter the pressure we put on the ministry. This repetitive operatic condition is what causes the biggest frustration with us as a union or as people who work in the institutions. Now, I remember that there was an attempt when the first minister was changed, there was an attempt from the independent sector to put a pressure on the government to leave the culture out of the political games and the political trades. And I'm certain that this is the only right way to create something sustainable, creative, and effective. After the fiasco with the strategy, the new law, the scandals with the program that we have each year, the ministry definitely needs reforms or redefinition. Maybe we should seek for positive experiences in countries that have functional ministries for culture, or even in countries which have a functional system without a ministry. I even think it is right to hire a globally distinguished consulting group and in collaboration with people with honest intention from the country, from here, to develop a completely new system, but just from the beginning, from a scratch. Although I personally cannot fully abandon the skepticism that the same thing will happen again and again. Even when we create something, then the practice will fail always in the practice. So it has been following us through the history. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Goce. We are now at let's say at the point when we invite our last official speaker at this discussion. But before I do that, I will once again remind the audience that follows us on Zoom to leave their questions, remarks, and comments in the Q&A section, and also the ones following us on the stream on Facebook to do so below the video that it's streamed. So now let me introduce the last official speaker today, Kristina Todoroska Petreska. She's a co-founder and program producer at the association INKA in Struga. And she's also an assistant dramaturg at the Public Theatre in Ohrid. So she also has this double agent position from which I hope she will tangle the questions of today's discussion. Tina, welcome.
Hello, Kika, and thanks to Lokomotiva and Oracle Network for inviting me to be a part of this event. As an alumni of European Diploma for Cultural and Project Management, I consider this Congress to be one of the most valuable events that gives space and platform to independent voices to be heard. So the honor is even bigger. I want to point out from the beginning that although it is an international Congress dealing with difficult issues related to state of culture and issues concerning the sector globally, I really feel the need to present very local context, the context of our communities in the periphery that are often neglected and forgotten, except for some sympathy expressed for the bravery. And let me start. Once upon a time, in the time when the Gruevski regime was in its climax, there were several crazy young enthusiasts from different artistic disciplines who united themselves into the idea to bring back already dead cultural life in Struga. Shortly after establishing their organization, they started developing a festival with zero resources, imagined as a festival for the community from the community. This vision and the enthusiasm sounded so catchy that engaged a great number of artists, professors, academics, and cultural managers from across the country, all of them voluntarily. The Cultural Center has opened its door, giving its premises to us, and that same summer, Dream On Festival was born, designed to approach different audiences from 5 to 8 years old. Interdisciplinary, enabling discussion, creation, presentation of artistic works from various disciplines. Transversal, opening various relevant socio-cultural topics, ecology, marginalized groups, gender issues, politics, cultural politics. Each year, 5 days in July, the festival became the meeting point of the cultural scene and audience from all over the country and abroad. It eventually became very popular and recognized, even some foundations showed support. Struga, as beautiful as it is, became a cultural destination. Being part of this journey, I was growing along with the festival. So now the year is 2019, June. It has been 7 years from the establishment of the festival. I am on my way to Delphi on the final session of the EO diploma. It is a kind of pilgrimage. On one side, you imagine you are meeting the mythical forces of oracles, Apollo and Dionysius, face to face with Socrates' wisdom. And on the other side, this transformative effect of the diploma sessions, lessons, workshops, peer-to-peer international exchange, finishing with evaluation. What has changed for you, for your work? What have you learned, achieved? And you hear Jean-Pierre's words in your head, your project is your baby. You need to nurture it, make it grow, give it the healthiest ingredients. And then you remember this task of making the estimation pie, where we are dividing the percentage of financing those same programs that we nurture. And you see, comparing to other peers from around the world, percentages are more or less the same. Some governments financing, some by foundations, very little from local government, etc. But if we compare the amount of money, it is a disaster. It's so damn shamefully incomparable. It's devastating. So there comes this evaluation day where I was asked, what has changed? I killed my baby, I said, like Medea, because the love of our baby is far bigger than we can give. Because after each edition, all of us involved were so unsatisfied, so frustrated with the conditions that we worked in, and so exhausted, angry to each other, although it was no one's fault. Because no matter how much money we fundraised, they were never enough to make it smooth, because it's not just the money you fundraise, it's the conditions of the devastated cultural center, its insufficient equipment, its inability to stage a decent theater play, although you pay thousands of euros to bring it to Struga. It is the inability to sustain such idealistic concept in such an unidealistic circumstances. It is the ignorance of idiotic local government that makes you sick of yourself because you dare to dream that you can change something. It is these winter programs, white dreaming, with so much suffering and freezing. It makes you sick because you know that these circumstances, these conditions will never change, and you can no longer allow yourself to be exhausted. It won't change anything. I killed my baby, I said, and that is when I think I became a cultural manager. It is a paradox, I know. But at the same time, one must find proper way to make a statement. Sometimes an idealistic approach might work, but sometimes it is maybe better to become more realistic, less positive when communicating the problems. One must preserve its dignity, one must preserve healthy logic, one must not dream and yet fight. And yet nothing is lost. Struga still has this group of people who maintain the scene. These people keep inventing and implementing high quality contemporary art programs. Being in a state of pandemic, since they remember, when it is a matter of culture, they even find it very interesting and inspiring to deal with the COVID crisis. As people who have seen no better, they can even be considered as a creative advisor. What to do with the distance? How you make a scene without the stage? I know I'm full of paradoxes and even maybe insensitive, but we from the periphery might benefit from all of this. I could never imagine attending so many debates, lectures on culture. I could never imagine that I will be lucky to attend so many great theater plays by world's most prominent assemblies. I could never imagine that we can become so close and full of understanding and supportive to each other with the colleagues from Skopje. I never imagined that the difference between the periphery and the center can be so easily erased. Yes, it is a struggle. It will be a challenge for the sector to stay on the surface. Creative economy may never heal from the consequences of the pandemic, but yet I see this challenging time as the right time to dig deeper in the problems and find sustainable solutions. And as we are all in the same position, maybe this will make all of us become more sensibilized for the conditions of those who are working in the continual state of pandemic. And now, hoping that this panel is followed by the decision makers and having in mind that they really want to make revolutionary changes, I would like to use the floor to send some messages. You're willing to promote interculturalism in the society, which is very good. But in order to achieve that, you need spaces where these intercultural relations will be built. Have you seen the cultural center in Struga, the multicultural city? Do you know that this building can serve nothing except for an event for 700 people? Are you aware that in Struga there is no public building left, that everything is sold or on sale, so there is no available place to be repurposed as a public space? Do you know that there are no studios, no galleries, no heating, no lighting, no sounding? How will you manage to bring intercultural relations to life? Without serious investments in cultural centers and equal opportunities for cultural expression, this vision will just stay just one of those empty big words or just a privilege for the already privileged citizens of the center. You intend to decentralize culture. Please don't do it. We already have enough problems. Are you aware of the state of the municipalities? Are you aware that municipalities, even like Ohrid and Struga, prominent cultural destinations, don't have proper staff to manage culture? First, make sure that these institutions constituted with properly educated people who are credible and open enough to discuss culture and decision-making in culture. You intend to promote cross-sectoral cooperation. It would be great if people from the independent scene could shake up the inert and sleeping public institutions. Some fresh energy is needed a lot in these phantom cultural castles that are so distant from the new generations. But first, start with managers. It is really urgent to stop choosing people according to their loyalty to a party. It is really urgent to put meritocracy first. It is of high importance that managers who will lead these institutions have at least non-formal knowledge of cultural policy and cultural management in order to recognize and be open enough for participatory approaches, to be sensibilized enough to work with independent cultural actors. Cultural institutions need to be transformed, capacitated and competent to achieve more, to go for the big European projects, to develop their capacity, to stay on track. Otherwise, sooner or later, they will die, and with them, the last hopes of the periphery. You have created maybe the greatest cultural strategy since the country's independence, although too idealistic. Now you need people, you need future generations that can follow it and implement it. Start with education. Art should be appreciated and practiced from an early age. This is not the case in the public education, on the contrary. Cultural management and cultural policy should be put as subject in the Faculty of Fine Arts, Drama Arts, Music and Dance Arts, Philology, Art History. It is about time in North Macedonia to have master studies for cultural policy and art management. Otherwise, don't hope for structural changes in near or far future. You open it up for the independent scene like no other government before. Now it's time to show real support to real achievers. As I explained myself in the story about giving birth, nurturing and killing our baby projects, there is nothing too hard and too impossible that we from the independent sector cannot achieve. I guess passion is our driving force since we are dealing with such harsh circumstances and yet striving to sustain the scene. But really, it's humiliating to see each and every year those long lists of projects, to compare your scores with the scores of organizations that no one has heard before, with no previous achievements, with no achievements at all. And yet they received very decent grants while we received peanuts. Only with very careful selections and finest choice, you will show real sustainable support and give an example of real criteria and encouragement for current and aspiring cultural operators. So at the end, in the periphery of nowhere, where there are no cultural investments since 1965, there are people who care about culture as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tinka, for this wonderful, emotional, passionate, lyric, and yet political presentation. And thank you all for your presentations at this panel. I was rechecking whether we have some questions or comments from the audience. We have 2 thumbs up below the live stream at Facebook. I think that people agree with you, as I can find some kind of similar positions in all of your presentations. We have one comment from our Biljana Tanurovska. Let me just read it for you and the audience. It says, Macedonia kills all babies, I agree. You all had brilliant presentations, thus we can just confirm that we are again in a gray situation. Goce said to cut off all and create a new system. If so, what would that be for all? What would be the sustainable positions in institutions and civil sector? think already tackled with her messages, but maybe some imagination. I also find myself thinking about kind of urging you or inspiring you to all today to kind of imagine more about if I call them solutions, we will not be inspired to imagine because we are not very used to having solutions to problems here, but just this position in which we find a place among all this, in this, as Biljana said, gray situation to maybe imagine more, to think of what can be done more, even if it doesn't seem to be reachable. I'm not addressing this to any one of you especially, precisely, so I'm leaving the floor for imagining.
I can maybe comment, Kika, if I can. I would just also like to thank everybody. I was really kind of happy to hear that somehow we all share. I felt a bit relieved somehow, to be honest. Like when you feel bad, when you hear from people that you really love and care, to hear the same thing, kind of feels a bit good. So we already are a gang, I think, and we can do something. I would just like, when Simona said there will be nobody left to care for culture, it kind of really stressed me somehow. Like really, that there are people that are dealing with these topics for many years, for 20 years. I don't know how they find their strength to somehow work in culture. I never felt that also, I never felt a bit more kind of, I never felt more inspired somehow, more to have somebody from the ministry to hear what we have to say and also like to respond to our comments. Like I really think that somebody from the ministry could have been here, but also like on the last conversation, Acto Agora, we also had the Minister of Culture, and I hope that somehow, and know that some of the questions were raised also there. As for Biljana, what said, and also the Goce's imagination, there will be no, Kika, can you read again what he said actually? He said,
start anew, practically, to abandon the system, to break it and start anew.
Yes, also like we had, this is a comment from Slobodan Unkovski that I really admire, and also in one moment when he had some of the strategic planning for Kultura, he said, Macedonia is so small to really have this kind of mega institutions. We cannot cope with so many institutions, a small country. We will have to dismiss this system in order to start all over again. So I think that Goce also has this same comment going the same manner. I really think that that this is a question, a starting point for our imagination, that we really have to kind of raise everything and start all over again. But then, is it that for everybody? We had a research, Filip Jovanovski and I, we had a research about the culture in former Yugoslavia and how culture was considered then. Also that, but culture was considered as something that belongs to everybody. And the cultural politics was created from that starting point. So when we talk about culture, it should be for the worker, but also for the employee, but also for the consumer, but also for the stakeholders. So culture should be for everybody. In this context now, culture is not understood like that. So that's why I have to repeat, I have to agree with this, that we should raise everything and start all over again. But we have to have political strength for it. And also the minister has to want this.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Well, when saying starting from the beginning, first of all, it's again developing a strategy. I don't think that the strategy that was developed and now it's not implemented was successful at all. First of all, it failed to understand that the ministry does not have the capacity to implement a strategy at all, or the political system in Macedonia has the capacity to implement a strategy. Now, what we really need is professionals who develop strategies. Like I can just recall now Boston Consulting Group, which is the world most famous consulting groups. So with people from here, experts, and then we should start first of all seeing the problems and then trying to assess the problems. And when we try to assess them, what kind of problems are going to appear here and there because of the system, because of the people here, because of many factors. I think that's why we failed right now with the strategy. And as everybody else said, that the politics has to take their hands away from culture. And maybe what Simona said, and I kind of said the same thing with the organizations of professionals, that we need strong and active organizations of professionals, that they will join into some kind of umbrella organization, and then they will fight for culture. I mean, the trade union can fight only for the workers' right. We can't fight for the policy, for the strategy, and so on. But as professionals in culture, on the other hand, we can join the fight in this umbrella organization. I'm not sure how many organizations are there. I can say just for the cultural heritage, I can number just 3 of them. Maybe the Macedonian Archaeological Society, ICOM, ICOMOS, maybe there is another one. I don't know about art history. I don't know if the theater, the people employed in theaters have their own society, or in the, I don't know, the opera and the Philharmonic Orchestra. So these organizations of professionals, I think they are the key organizations that maybe they can push things forward.
Thank you, Goce. You can go, any of you, yes.
May I? Yeah. So Biljana has a statement that we should use our imagination, but I am a fan of keeping it simple. We all agree today that we need a professionalism and professionalism everywhere in the culture, in all fields of culture. So I am at that statement. If everyone is doing his job and is professional in the field of that he is working in, we will we'll have a progress. So I think that's it's as simple as that. Thank you.
I just want to ask Philip, how are you going to make people from the Ministry of Culture professional?
That's the problem. That's the problem. You know, we need. I'm here with you, but with this changing of the structures of the people that are working there. You know, we need in all fields of I was talking also about that, about the public institutions and the administration that is working in it. It's most of the people are unprofessional. So that's the problem. It's going from we need the professionalization from the bottom to the top. So, or from the top to the bottom. So that's how we should get there. We should start with the Ministry of Culture.
Yeah, I believe that you work in one of the best institutions in culture right now, the one that is doing something really, and it has pretty good feedback and effect of the things you do. But you were lucky enough to have 2 good directors, and you kind of maintained the continuity. Of course, the team is important. It is the same team, but the same team probably is equally inspired by both directors, the one in the past and the one right now. And there are not many cases like that in the country. Maybe the Philharmonic Orchestra has the similar situation, pretty much.
Yes, but we had our fight at this point. So we had our fight, and we are still like in 3 years, like we are struggling about that situation.
Yeah, actually, you're the only institutions or the group of employed people who said stop. It's not for the politicians who should decide who's going to be the director here.
Yes, probably.
It should listen to our voice.
Unfortunately, yeah. I wish that there were more institutions that will do like that. I mean, people should think with their own heads, and they should just raise their voice if something is just not right for them. So I think that we need courage, and we need to get the people to the right positions. I think that we need the courage, more courage in our society generally, not just in the culture.
But also the chemistry of the team of your institution is one of the best things, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I agree with Goce that the team is very crucial. I mean, in your, I think it was, yeah, Filip who was talking about the lack of response from the institutions on the COVID-19 crisis. So I remember in my institution, we gathered a bunch of people, like 3-4 people, and we came out with, I don't know, thousands ideas about that, how we can survive and produce cultural events during COVID times, and they were pretty much, I don't know, doable. But yet we were accused as very realistic and very pessimistic, and I don't know what. And then the whole summers, we spent whole summer sitting at homes instead of, I don't know, using these great summer scenes that we have in Ohrid. So it's, you know, it's good to have team and everything, but yet the management will simply not allow it, or it will say, let's see what the Ministry of Culture will respond to this, you know. And then we waited a whole summer. Even now we are waiting for the protocols from up. Although that there are not many people in the institutions, but there are some people who can, you know, provide change, but they should be taken in consideration. So with the idealism, I'm waking every morning with a new idea, but at the end of the day, it's kind of, yeah, frustrating, and all I can think of is just let's occupy these institutions, let's occupy the Ministry of Cultures. And I mean, I know it's destructive, but there are obstacles all the time.
It's not just destructive, it's kind of romantic also. I just want to share with you greetings from the audience that follows us. Ivica Dimitrijevic says that you all had great presentations and that they were straight to the point. Ivica is our colleague and friend. He's an actor and musician. And we had this great remark by Sofia Grigoridou, who follows us. She says, thank you all for your presentation and insights of the current situation in the cultural sector. It is an observation, information kind of, and not a question that she shares with us. She says, COVID-19 in Greece brought about a consideration of discussions in terms of precarity, cultural workers' rights, solidarity, sharing information, and etc. Of course, I do not argue that the crisis has the intrinsic characteristic of mobilizing people. But in this case, people from the arts chose to come together in a way we have not seen before in Greece. I agree very much with Goce that it is important to communicate with people in the region. I therefore copy here the link to this initiative in case some of you are interested in what they do and or in contacting with them now or in the future. So this remark that Sofia shared I will use it kind of to ask you, because one of the questions that was in the description of the event is what is to be done to save the sector. How can we cope even now in this situation? However, while I was listening to you, this over and over again, this statement that we who work in the cultural sector have always worked in a pandemic situation. We were never kind of happy to have these great conditions, whether work conditions, whether money, whether whatever conditions to do so. So even now, after being exhausting of this let's say, frustration, depression. However, there is something probably that there has to be something to be done. And in this discussion, I've kind of heard all of you kind of proposing this coming together. Building platforms, building associations, kind of together advocating for something. And can you go more about this kind of idea of solidarity that maybe can get us all out of this sinking deep down in the gray area, as Biljana said?
I think that one good example is, maybe I forgot to mention, now I remind myself, Jadro, Association of the Independent Cultural Scene. I don't know how long they exist, but there are 20 organizations part of the association. There are also more than 20 individuals. So that is at least, if one organization had 5 people, that's more than 120 people in Jadro. So that amount of people, that amount of professional people can start some kind of what we all speak about. And they are doing that. I think Cultural Ecos is a member, participative member for 1 year, this pandemic year, but we didn't have time to learn more about the work and how to be part of that and how we can participate and make something out of that. But I think that is a good example. If somebody of you know or collaborate more with them, I think it's a good start, a good example for doing changes from independent culture scene, from the positions that we are all in, that kind of togetherness.
Well, I propose to the other, we are also members, and I guess all of us, more or less, but we need to at least meet live. Now live is Zoom. I mean, it doesn't matter. At least once in 4 months or however, to, I don't know, to share the specific problems and to see what can be done, not just with Jadro, also this new initiative of Lokomotiva and Acto, the culture is the, please Ivana.
Main page of the society.
Front page of every society.
Yes, but as I know, these people need help. I mean, it's very, I don't know, a big task to rule all these things and to advocate for everybody. And I think that human capacities are very weak. So maybe, yes, maybe we can all contribute somehow to help these processes going. And I remember we have a partner from Sweden that we apply for projects together. And it's amazing that they have this like collective agreement for independent artists, or actually it works for all artists in Sweden. And I think they worked on it like maybe 3-4 years, but now when you collaborate with someone from Sweden, it's really amazing. They have this strict rate, like how much per hour is the limit for worker from there, from Sweden. So they cannot pass it, and it's very, very nice to see how they all respect this agreement. They would not, like, as solidarity, give you more hours than they are paid for in the project. So I think it's the time, no matter if we are, I don't know, if we like each other personally, or we prefer being more in a group with those or those. I think that this kind of agreement, like our collective agreement, it might work to make clear positions for independence scene. I don't know, should that be Yadro or this other initiative or whoever, or might come from, I don't know, from one group, but I think that we can find each other in this kind of document.
Okay, I can add that this what Sofia pointed out with the cultural alliance of cultural workers in Greece seems to be like a good idea for an organization that will put everybody under one umbrella. And this organization probably we should speak directly to the government, not going to the ministry, because it will change nothing. And this organization have to tell the government that culture should not be a tradable good. It should stay away from politics, and professionals should do their job. And then from there, this organization should participate in the complete reorganization of the ministry itself. And then from there, we need to choose the right managers on the institutions. And then in the institutions, we can see who's working and who's not working, and how to stimulate the people to work more or employ different people. So it needs certain hierarchy, because we always say these are the problems. How are we going to solve them? We have to go and speak directly to the main guy, the one at the top, and say, okay, this should stop. There's no point going from, we're going nowhere from here.
Can I also add something, Kika? Because I also already think I mentioned about this initiative, Culture is the front page of every society. I felt compelled to add something a bit to it. This initiative is basically an initiative that's run by few people, and that's one of the problems actually that were tackled already. Like you cannot you cannot manage, or you cannot address every problem in the cultural sector with working by few people. So, but what we've done in the past years is that we really try to revise the regulation of the status of freelance artists, and also the law of public interest in culture. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the thing is that it stopped somehow. It's not going forward. And we can also talk about what are the problems, the changes of the ministers. Also, Goce mentioned how the Ministry of Culture is functioning, and that's a problem already of its own. But still, as an initiative, we really try to do something with that. We already talked with the SKRM and with Sanja, and also Goce, you can also you have to know this. We all want to join in your union to also become stronger, because we don't have a union, and our problems are not heard from anybody. So we are somehow on our own, and the precarity of our position as freelancers is something that's a topic that's not addressed at all. So that's not worked on it systematically and in the frames of the law. So the ideas of being together and do something together are really valuable and are really noble. And we all have to somehow, if we want to do that, we all have to kind of put all our strength to manage to do that. The problem is that we are not heard, and this is something that this is a big problem in our society. All the machines are put forward, in doing something, in kind of in writing in every report that the numbers of plays, the numbers of books, the numbers of exhibitions, the numbers of this and that, but nobody cares how culture somehow is produced. And I think that this is something that has to be worked on in the first place, and then after that we all have to do something on our particular interests.
I personally am very sorry that the artists from the independent sector are not in our trade union, and that we are not able to protect their rights or to protect our rights together. I think it's more or less to the way the legal system is organized, and I'm not sure, now I'm thinking while I'm speaking, of how can you get in it, because you seem to be kind of in the private sector, and the private sector itself, it has its own collective agreement for the private sector, and there is a separate collective agreement for the public sector, and then there is our smaller collective agreements. But I think we should check if there is a legal opportunity in the next collective agreement, which will happen at the end of 2021. What can we do? Because I think it's about time to think how to improve the collective agreement, which is right now, and maybe there is an opportunity for this independent artist to get into the same agreement. But we have to check the legal opportunities. I'm not sure. Maybe we should talk to the lawyers and see what kind of profiles are there, what are the needs of these people, and how they think that they should be protected, and from whom, of course. But I won't say there's no opportunity and we won't do anything. I think that there is a way. There's always a way.
Just a small comment on this. There is a way. We already talked about it, and as I mentioned in the symposium that we organized last year, Todoroska was there, and she also kind of said there should be a collective agreement for freelancers. There is an opportunity. There is a opportunity to do this. But maybe we have to just like speak privately about on this topic and see what we can do together.
Okay, we can meet and discuss this, of course.
Already building platforms even here, which is lovely. I also want to share this. Firstly, let me just ask you whether I maybe interrupted someone. Some of you wanted to add something to this, or? Okay, I suppose not. So let me share this comment that we received on Facebook. It's by Bill Roseberry, and he says the solutions to cultural health come not from various ministers and their particular whims and opinions, but from artists and their communities in active solidarity with one another. So that is a comment that we have. I don't see any more comments by now, only greetings and thumbs up for the discussion. And we have some more minutes if someone wants to add something or say something. If not, I will have to just consult with Lokomotiva whether it is good for us to wait for some more questions in order to fulfill the time, or we can maybe conclude. Because for me, I think that we kind of covered the questions for the discussion, and if it's, we can ask among others. Yes, do you want to someone maybe exchange something, some questions? If or comments or whatever. if not, then let me thank you for this fruitful discussion and this great afternoon spent together on the behalf of Lokomotiva and Oracle. I want to thank you for enabling us to be together and discuss these important issues, and for the audience for staying with us and sharing their insights and comments. I wish you all to stay healthy and well and safe, and for us all to stay in this position of caring for one another in order to see the end of this as soon as possible, and also to Lokomotiva and Oracle to have great days of the Congress that are left. Thank you all, and see you again, I suppose, really soon. Best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kika.